This is an Alberta School broadcast. Today's program in the series Men Who Came West is First Mercy Flight to the North, based on the book Wap May.
After the First World War, a new phrase was to be added to the vocabulary of Canadians. This was bush pilot, to explain the young flyers who, with small, open cockpit planes, began the first assaults on our vast North Country. In many areas, no trees could grow because of permafrost, only small bush. The only means of transportation in the far north up to now was by dog team. For the first time in history, the aeroplane, as it was called, was used in battle, with many young men receiving their training in England and France from the Royal Air Force. Among these from Western Canada were Wap May, who had come west at the age of 6 in 1902, Punch Dickens, George Gorman, Roy Brown, Fred McCall, Vic Horner, and many others. All these young men wanted to remain in flying when the war was over, but there was no such thing as commercial flying as yet. Even when a group of boys pooled their money, they still did not have enough to buy a plane. However, recognizing the many young men from the city of Edmonton who had high war records, a wealthy man in the East bought a plane that had been used for training purposes and presented it to the city. When the boys heard the news, they were jubilant and hurried down to the city hall to speak to the mayor.
Please, let us use the plane, sir. These machines are meant to fly, not to just sit and be looked at.
Yes, it will gather dust and might even become damaged while on display.
Any machine rusts out faster than it wears out. That's a fact, Your Worship.
Well, now, boys, we'll have to think this over. There were no restrictions put on the use of the plane when it was given to the city, but, we have never thought of having it flown.
But, sir, that's what it's for.
We'd promised to look after it, too, wouldn't we, fellows?
Of course. Well, we've got a top mechanic right here in town who'd like to keep up the training he received in the war.
Pete Derbyshire knows all about aeroplanes. He works in Wap's father's car shop, and he'd like to help us.
Boys, I can't give you an answer now. I'll have to talk it over with the counselors. I'm afraid some of them might think it too dangerous.
Why, sir, it isn't as dangerous as riding in a car. There's no traffic up there in the first place.
Mr. Mayor, we're all used to dodging bullets in the air. We wouldn't have that problem now.
All right, boys, now, look, I just can't give you an answer now, but I do promise I'll bring it up at the next meeting, and I'll let you know the decision just as soon as possible.
The boys had to be content with this, and at last came the great news. They might use the plane on the condition that they keep it in good condition, as well as pay the city a fee of $25 per month. This is how the first plane came to be flown in Edmonton. Wap May taxied the Jenny, as they called her for her markings JN4 Canuck, away from her resting place at the exhibition grounds out to a bare field the boys had rented from a farmer. Planes, still called aeroplanes, were considered to be just toys at this time, or at least a curiosity. The boys began to make a little money by taking some daring people out for rides over the city. Then they began to put on exhibitions of flying at the annual Calgary Stampede and Edmonton Exhibition. It was in Calgary that an event happened that almost put an end to the careers that had not even begun. It was Fred McCall's turn to take up the plane one afternoon with Wap, his brother Court, and a great crowd watching the performance.
Oh, no. Fred's in trouble, Court.
I sure don't like the sound of that engine. But what'll he do?
Why, he'll just have to bring her down.
Oh, how can he with all these people around? Look, there's Pete the mechanic making sweeping motions with his arm. He wants the crowd to disperse.
All right, folks, just move back so that no one will get hurt. He's bringing the plane down, right here on the grounds.
And he brought it down all right on top of the merry-go-round.
What on earth happened, Fred?
Give me a hand out, will you? Oh, God, I had Andrew. Pete doesn't know. He'll have to look at it first. Now we're in for it. We've just bought a merry-go-round.
With what?
Excuse me, but you own this plane?
That's right. What's left of it?
The manager of the fair would like to see you in his office.
Oh, boy.
Well, let's go. Might as well face the music.
Why did this have to happen to me?
Oh, forget it, Fred. It could have happened to any of us.
Here we are. Sir, here are the flyers.
Come in, boys. Come right in.
We can't tell you how sorry we are about this.
Well, no need for that, my boys. Just take a look at your airplane out the window there.
I know. It's your merry-go-round.
That's not what I mean. Look at that crowd.
I don't understand
An audience. An audience means money, which happens to be why I'm in this business. I have a proposition for you fellas.
You have?
I want your permission to put a tin around that whole thing. Then I can charge admission. Why, I'll make a fortune.
But your merry-go-round.
The proceeds from the show will pay for another one and more. People come to this fair from all over the country. Most of them have never seen a plane. Least of all ones landing on a merry-go-round. Now, what do you say?
We say yes.
The show was so successful that the same year it was moved to Edmonton, where it also did a landslide business. Luckily, the plane could be repaired. However, stunt flying could only be carried on during the summer months, and the boys gradually went broke. Fred McCall returned to Calgary and took another job, but Wap and George Gorman grimly held on. When, in 1920, came news of an important oil discovery at Fort Norman in the Northwest Territories, the boys were asked to go to the United States and fly in two heavier aircraft for an oil company. Successful, it would mean a giant step forward in the use of the airplane commercially. But Gorman, due to impossible landing and takeoff conditions in the north, cracked up both planes. He became discouraged and left for a steady job. Wap alone hung on. But even he had to admit defeat. Further, he had now married and had to have a steady income. So he worked as a salesman for a cash register firm. One day, he returned home for dinner, where he was unusually quiet.
All right, Wap. Now that you've had your dinner and coffee, tell me what's on your mind.
What makes you think there's anything on my mind?
When you sit and brood, I know it's something important. What is it, Wap? Could it be flying?
Well, you must be a mind reader.
No, just your wife.
Well, to tell the truth, I ran into Vic Horner today. Remember Vic?
Yes, I do. An old flying buddy, isn't he?
That's right. And guess what? He's bought himself a beautiful little plane, an Avro Avian.
And?
You've probably guessed this, too. He wants me to go into business with him. He's convinced that the time has come when we can get business, and so am I. It's just got to come, and we both want to be there, available and first.
I see. Well, Wap, the decision must be yours.
Oh, there's a risk. I wouldn't fool you about that. But it's one I'd like to take. Someone has to. But I wouldn't go ahead unless you agreed.
Dear, I do agree. The whole idea of you sitting at a desk job is wrong, and it's easy to see your heart isn't in it. Flying is all you've ever wanted to do.
You're right there.
You know, a man must do what is right for himself, something he truly believes in.
Why, you're a brick to take a chance with me. We won't likely have much money, for a while anyway.
Oh, goodbye, you see. And I really don't think it's so much of a chance. Anyone who believes so strongly as you just has to be right.
Great. I'll phone Vic right away.
On New Year's Day, 1929, Wap May received a phone call from Alberta's Minister of Health, Dr. Bowe, which set off a chain of events that was to change bush flying forever. Wap immediately called Vic.
Happy New Year and hello.
Vic, it's Wap. We've got a job.
Oh, today? You're kidding.
No, this is serious. Mighty serious. Dr. Bowe called me a few minutes ago. He's had a telegram from Peace River that took the man with the dog sled 12 days to reach. What looks like an epidemic of diphtheria has occurred 50 miles north of Fort Vermilion. I told him we'd fly antitoxin up. He says that's the only hope. That and speed. To send it by train, then dog sled again, would take more than 2 weeks.
Well, that's for sure. But now, do you know what the temperature is?
Yes, I checked. about 40 below.
Well, what about the serum? I understand if that stuff freezes, it's useless.
That's a problem, all right. Vic, what do you think of carrying a charcoal heater? Wouldn't that do the trick?
Say, I think you've got it. Well, when do we leave?
At dawn in the morning. We're going to need every bit of daylight we can get.
You said it.
What I'll do now is send a telegram to McLennan. We should be able to make that the first day with any luck. I'll ask if they'll mark out a landing place with trees, whatever they can think best.
Right. I'll pick up a heater if you like, if you'll get the antitoxin. Now, is there anything else?
Yeah, just one more. Borrow, beg, or steal all the warm clothes you can get your hands on. It's going to be cold.
Cold it was. In those days, the pilot and navigator sat exposed to the weather, whatever it might be. Further, there was no means of getting a report as to what could be expected many hundreds of miles north. Snow, fog, or sleet could cut visibility to nil. Incredible as it seems today, planes could only fly in daylight. There were no landing fields in the north, nor beacons to light the way. No plane as yet was fitted with radios, de-icers for the windshield, or a closed cockpit. In this way, the journey had to be accomplished by stages. To McLennan the first day, Peace River the next, and, hopefully, Fort Vermilion on the third. There, a courier de bois would carry the serum to the stricken settlement 50 miles beyond.
We've got to miss those spruce tops. We've got to. Can hardly see them, but I know they're there.
Up with the nose, fellow. I'll let you know the minute I see anything that looks like a landing field.
By my calculations, we should be just about over McLennan now.
Mine too, and we'd better be. The light's fading fast. There she is, and a landing strip. They've got it marked off with an avenue of trees. You see them?
Sure do. And a reception committee, too, if I'm not mistaken. Can you imagine people waiting around in this cold?
Oh, I hope there's a hot stove going someplace where we can hole up for the night. I've never been so cold in my life.
Hang on to your hat. Here we go for the landing.
The first lap of the trip had been a success, but the boys weren't through yet. In this temperature, they had to drain the engine or the oil would freeze. Wap and Vic were their own pilots, navigators, and mechanics. Again, the next morning, they were up before dawn, heating the precious oil over a bonfire. This dangerous procedure was followed by Wap warming the engine with a blowtorch. Of course, the boys knew this could have been fatal, but there was no other way. On the last lap of the journey, two Mounties were first to be at the side of the plane when it touched down.
We're nearly frozen. Would you give us a hand to get out of the plane?
Out you come. Boy, you're really stiff with a cold.
Oh, I think Wap's in worse shape. Give him a hand, too, will you? Thanks.
Can you make it, fellow?
Sorry, no. I can't get my fingers off the controls.
Well, let's see now. Golly, I've done a lot of things in my time, but this is the first time I've ever had to loosen a hand, finger by finger. There, okay?
Oh, okay. Soon as I loosen up, I'll get the antitoxin.
Bang your hands together like this.
That's better. I think the blood is beginning to circulate again. Well, here we are, the antitoxin.
Thanks, fellows. And still nice and warm. Louis Barassa is all set to his dog team, the best driver around these parts.
Well, tell him he'll have to keep it warm, or it just won't work.
We'll help him pack it. Now, you two go on up to the barracks and thaw out. Good work.
Wap May, with many firsts to his credit, was one of the greatest of all bush pilots.
First Mercy Flight to the North was produced by radio station CKUA for the Audio-Visual Services branch of the Department of Education. Heard today were Jack Dixon, Robin Carson, Doug Paulson, Jean Rivet, and George Gillespie. Technical operation by Dan Key, production by Shirley Higginson. This is the last program in the series. This has been an Alberta School broadcast.